using research to drive the creative process. And another topic that I think we really want to highlight with you today is the importance of launching your brand from the inside out. The campaign that we're going to show you for Bloomfield was one that really was an organic process and was inspired by the campus community. And finally, we want to talk to you about how to extend your brand promise to every touch point for maximum impact. In essence, the webinar today is all about how to define your brand and put your desired brand identity into the words that you can live up to. Before we go any further, I'd like to just introduce Adam. And Adam, maybe tell us a little bit about Bloomfield College and why you felt this was an important project for the college.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Adam Castro. I'm the Vice President for Enrollment Management at Bloomfield College. I've been at the institution for 11 years, and as Vice President, I oversee the Office of Admission, Student Financial Services, and Marketing for the college. Really excited to talk to all of you about this project and our partnership with TWG Plus today, because it has literally been the most fun and just energetic project that I've worked on during my career. When we initially started out seeking a partner for this, we were calling this project a rebranding campaign. And one of the things that we quickly realized is that we had never branded the college in the first place. So this is really an initial project and something that we had to do as an institution. You'll see a little bit about Bloomfield College. We've been around for a little while. We started back in 1868 as the German Theological Seminary of Newark. So we've evolved quite a bit over the last near 150 years. We currently serve about 2,000 students, and I think we're a really unique institution. We offer over 60 degree programs. We're very close to New York City, which is obviously a selling point for the institution. But we have a unique mission. We've always been access-oriented, and one of the special things about Bloomfield College, I believe, is we've changed and evolved as the township of Bloomfield and the neighboring areas have changed and evolved as well. So at this point in our history in both the institution and the area, it's an incredibly diverse population of people, one of the most diverse in the country. And you can see that the college has recently been ranked 11th in the country by U.S. News and World Report for diversity. We are about 50% African American, 23% Hispanic Latino. Our students are coming from all over the state of New Jersey. We're about 90% in-state, but students are coming to us from as far as Korea, to as close as down the street in Bloomfield. So I just think it's an incredibly rich and interesting place, and I've had a great time building my career here. Part of the reasons why we wanted to jump into this branding campaign, which I think are a little bit different than most institutions. I think one of the things that we really have been honest with ourselves is that we're just in an incredibly competitive market here. In Northern Jersey, there's no shortage of 4-year public and private and 2-year options. Students with average to good academic credentials really have their choice on where they want to enroll. So we need to acknowledge to ourselves that we really need to build at a niche market if we're going to be successful. We also needed to be, for a small place, we were really promoting the idea that this is an intimate experience, that everything from recruitment to advisement to career service is going to be an intimate experience, and we needed to make sure that everybody was on message, and we had a collective voice that we wanted everybody to kind of go out there to our external and internal constituencies with. Then we wanted to build internal engagement. Again, a small school, it's really important to us that we instill a sense of pride in this institution. And I think early on in this process, we found out that this is a really, really prideful place. People, especially our staff, faculty, alumni, and trustees, they see a value added for being a part of this community. We just needed to make sure that was recognized, and we were giving them the resources to promote the institution with that collective voice. And then finally, capitalizing on recent wins. I think a lot of times institutions go through exercises like this for the wrong reasons. Maybe they're suffering in terms of enrollment, or they're losing faculty, or the retention numbers are struggling, or just the finances are struggling. and that is what is really influencing them to make a drastic change and to change their brand. We kind of did it the opposite way. I mean, we saw some successes. We had 2 very strong freshman classes in a row. We had built a beautiful new residence hall. We hired a new PR director that was doing a really good job of getting us out in the press and getting us noticed more than ever before. So we just thought it was a really good time to capitalize on those wins and to kind of take that next step and be bold. And I think what you'll see when we start learning more about our individual brand is it's all about being bold. We can't kind of sit back. We need to kind of take control of our future as an institution.
What we did, next we'll cover a little bit about the actual branding process. There were really essentially 4 phases that we went through as a team, starting with the initial discovery and research phase all the way through to launching the brand. I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of those phases. The first phase, Adam, do you want to talk a little bit about the interviews and the focus groups that we did?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is probably the most interesting and eye-opening part of the process because, it's really, everybody has their own opinions or their own influencers in terms of where they are as an institution, but it's a lot different when you have hard data, from quantitative and qualitative research in front of you to help you make those decisions going forward and how you want to position yourself. So I thought the really important thing was bringing TWG Plus to campus fairly quickly after we began the partnership and just meeting people. And that's conducting focus groups with really our most important constituencies, and that's our current students, our faculty, staff, alumni, but we also brought in the local community. We brought in some politicians. We brought in, the chief of police in Bloomfield because we want to make sure that they understand and they have an opinion on where we're positioned now and where we want to go. And we also brought in prospective students. We brought in students that were starting for the first time at Bloomfield in fall of 14 to get kind of that unfiltered opinion that they have about the institution and why eventually they selected us. We did surveys to internal and external constituencies, and TWG kind of put that all together for us.
We also did a competitor positioning analysis, which was very insightful as well. You cannot build a brand in isolation. You have to have a really good sense of who your competition is, how they're positioning themselves, and identify opportunities to really stand out in that marketplace. This is just an example of some of the questions that we explored with prospective students. For example, we really wanted to understand what are the most important attributes students look for when selecting a college. And this is important. Not only what are we really good at, but what's important to them and how can we identify any gaps in our current offerings. We wanted to understand how they view Bloomfield, what makes us distinctive, what makes us unique, where are our strengths and weaknesses, how do we compare to the competition. We also had an opportunity to find out how they're learning about us. And so there was a lot of great questions that we were able to explore both internally and externally and really get a good sense of how we're currently perceived and positioned. And that was very, very helpful, I think also in combination with the on-campus interviews, which really helped us to get to the heart and soul of the college. This is just one example. I think the final report for the prospective student survey was probably around 50 pages or so, wasn't it, Adam? But
yes.
This is just one sample slide that I pulled that I think is really important. We asked prospective students on a scale of 1 to 5, how important are these attributes to them when selecting a college? And we were able to identify the key drivers. So you can see, to me, the key drivers are things that kind of rank above a 4.5 on a scale of 1 to 5. So you can see the quality of the program or major, the graduates getting good jobs or getting accepted into good graduate programs, the expertise of faculty, followed closely by faculty as teachers and mentors. Now, again, this is for Bloomfield and Bloomfield's prospective student base, but it is something that I would say is very similar to a lot of other colleges and universities that I've been working with recently. And it's been interesting for me. I've been working in higher education marketing now specifically for about 10 years. And when I first started, this idea of graduates getting good jobs was never at the top of the list. It was actually more at the bottom of the list people didn't necessarily go to university or college just to get a job, but now it's really at the top of the list. And so if you're not paying attention to this, and if you're not communicating where your graduates are and the successes that you're having, you're missing a huge opportunity. The other reason why I thought it was important for us to understand the drivers and the important attributes is that we wanted to make sure that we didn't fall into a trap of only communicating our strengths and not understanding whether or not they were truly important. So I just wanted to share that one sample slide. There were many, many that gave us a lot of insight as we moved through the branding process to keep in mind how are we perceived, what can we realistically do in order to really distinguish ourselves in this competitive marketplace.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything, really that would surprise anybody on that list, and I think at most institutions you're going to find something similar. But for us, we work with a very high-need student population. About 70% of our students are Pell eligible. So we were focusing so much on recruitment and cost of attendance in almost all of our marketing materials and our web presence. And it may have been to the detriment of an area like our programming and our majors. So seeing this really brought everything together, and kind of we were able to refocus, knowing that cost of attendance is still always going to be important, but it may not be the most important thing to the majority of our students.
It may not be the essence of your brand. I think what was helpful with this research is that at first we identified the drivers, but then later on in the survey we also asked, now how is Bloomfield performing on these same attributes? So we were able to identify where are we performing in a way that measures up to how important this attribute is, and where are we falling short of expectations? So if graduates getting good jobs is that important, how are we actually doing on that? And we were able to see how prospective students viewed us on this attribute and every other attribute, as well as our own internal audiences. And that was really, really eye-opening to realize that there's certain things that we have been communicating really well that are being received, but others that have fallen to the side. Once we had all of this information in hand, we moved into the next phase, which is really developing our brand positioning framework. Sometimes you may have heard this referred to as a brand portfolio or a brand framework, and it began with convening a steering committee. And Adam, maybe you could talk a little bit about who you wanted to put on that committee and how that all came together.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most important things if anybody's looking to set out on a project like this. And I think we did a fairly good job at putting together a steering committee. It was really important for me to get buy-in from the campus community. And how this has kind of evolved for me personally is this has really turned into an internal practice. It's getting everybody enthusiastic. It's getting everybody on brand here on the campus. And I think a lot of the external factors are going to take care of themselves if we're handling our business here on campus. So when I convened the steering committee, I really made sure that every department on the campus was represented, and every vice president was represented, meaning student affairs had a place at the table, advancement had a place at the table, obviously the academic side. But even breaking it down more specifically than that, I wanted someone from our tutoring center, because I really think that's something that distinguishes us from other people in the marketplace. And I think beyond that, I think we made a really smart decision to include faculty on the steering committee, so they always had a presence and were able to report back to the full faculty on a regular basis. And we included 3 trustees, all of which had an interest or work experience in the marketing field, to kind of get that. Well, it's not an external viewpoint. It's somebody that has a much higher level understanding of the institution, and to get their input, which really became invaluable.
And let's not forget the CFO, Adam.
Yes, that was important too.
Yes, which was great to have his engagement and support throughout the process, and him to really understand where all this is coming from and the tremendous impact that it can have on the college. Once we convened the steering committee, we returned to campus and presented all of the market research, facilitated some discussions around the findings and implications, went through a SWOT analysis where we really took a very, very close look at what are our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, our threats, and really felt that we had a pretty good body of knowledge to begin to craft our brand position. One of the things that we did, and I think it went over very well, and Adam, you can certainly jump in here, is that we really engaged this steering committee in crafting those statements. We didn't go back and come back and say, here's your brand position. We really wanted this to be a process that involved key constituents from across the campus community. And so we facilitated a workshop where the goal was to develop 3 to 5 potential brand promise statements. And we wanted to test those. Adam, did you want to say a couple words about how you felt that worked for the culture within Bloomfield?
Yeah, it was incredibly important, and I think we use this term brand ambassadors now. I'm pretty much on the recruiting trail, whether it's on my campus or in the community, and to find as many brand ambassadors for Bloomfield College that I can find. And this exercise truly, if people in the steering committee weren't already bought in, they were bought in after this exercise because they saw that the input that we were giving as a steering committee, combined with the data, combined with the expertise at TWG Plus, was developing our potential brand promises. And I think that's important, that this really came out organically. And when we get to the final, it's a truly organic brand, and it's something that everybody on this campus really played a role in.
Right. I think it was, we really, really enjoyed that and all felt really good about the final product because it was not something that just the committee came up with. It was something that really had so much input. When I mentioned earlier that we set out to develop 3 to 5 potential promises, I just want to mention a word or two about what the brand promise is. And what we did during that workshop was, of course, we looked at the qualitative and quantitative research. We also made sure that everything we were doing aligned very well with the college's mission, vision, strategic priorities. And again, we also looked at that competitor positioning analysis. Again, making sure that what we develop for Bloomfield is unique, authentic, and something that we can really live up to. What we did is just a couple more. Oh, sorry about that. Again, the promise statement, the way that we defined it for this exercise was really that we were aiming to develop a one-of-a-kind promise about who we are, what we stand for, and what sets us apart. It's a pledge. It's really something that we stake our reputation on. And Adam, I know that you and I have talked about this. It's that internal statement which all interactions with internal and external audiences should be tested. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the webinar when we talk about how to extend your brand to every touch point. And I know, having worked with a lot of different colleges and universities across the country, that a lot of times people set out to do a branding project, and they're really focused on the promotional materials. You know, what does our website look like? What do our publications look like? How are we talking to people? But they're not really looking at the day-to-day interactions. And when we did this with Bloomfield, we looked at absolutely everything. From the moment that you park your car on campus, what is that experience like? And how can we make sure that we integrate the essence of who we are into everything that we do? Your brand promise should be realistic, yet aspirational, grounded in who you are now and who you aspire to become. Because, you know, it has to be scalable. You can't develop a brand promise that works for you today, but something that you would want to have to revise again in five years. So that your brand promise should be something that really lasts a long, long time. Even though your creative campaign may be refreshed from time to time, you want to make sure that when you articulate this, it's something that you can grow with for many years.
Yeah, I think it's really important to note that, you know, when we set out, we're not looking to change the mission of the college. This wasn't about changing who we are. It was about accentuating who we are. So I think the brand promise statement and I think those definitions were fantastic. It really rings true. You know, when you're putting in a new initiative, whether it's marketing, whether it's academic, whether it's a new program or major, and you really you position that against your brand promise, it'll lead you in the right path, and I think that's an incredibly powerful thing. Right.
One of the things that we wanted to do was to make sure that we didn't just develop a brand promise as a committee, although it was a very engaging exercise. We wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to test these brand promises with our key constituents. And so we developed an online survey, and we wanted to test them around 3 key parameters. First of all, we wanted to ask them, is this promise important to you? You know, and it's really a test of relevance. If it's not important to them, why would we bother? Is it distinctive? Does it differentiate us from key competitors? And thirdly, is it authentic? And I think this is a really, really important point. Is the promise true to who we are and where we're going as an institution? Because we can develop some fantastic statements about a college, but if people don't believe it about you, boy, you're really going to have your work cut out for you. And so we wanted to make sure that our final brand promise met those key tests. We did the online survey. We had about 343 people respond. That included current and prospective students, faculty, staff, and alumni. We were able to assess each of the brand promise statements. And when I say statements, that's exactly what they were. They were one sentence long. I've seen brand positioning frameworks with brand promises that are a page long, and I don't know that that necessarily helps the school find focus. Your brand promise project or exercise should be one about finding focus and clarity, not adding more and more details. That can come a little bit later. So we were able to assess how each of the promises performed, and then we're also able to see which one people preferred overall. And I just want to show you, again, this was another presentation that had, I think, probably 40 or 50 slides, but this is just one example. We were able to segment the data. So this is prospective students, for example. We were able to ask them, which is your favorite statement overall? You can see we had 225 prospective students who responded to the survey, and we had two statements that were doing quite well. And again, keep in mind, I was actually really impressed with our committee because we were very focused and very, very concise with our promise statements. The first statement that you see here, Bloomfield College is a canvas for bold and courageous students who want to write their own story. Did very, very well in the minds of prospective students and ranked very well on those parameters and was one of the favorites overall. And then the second one, which is Bloomfield College, is a starting line for students who want to beat the odds and make an impact in the world. And keep in mind sort of the description that Adam gave you about the type of place that Bloomfield is. But this doesn't tell the whole story. Even if looking at the parameters and looking at which one's their favorite, what we're also able to do is to ask them, well, what part of that statement do you really like? And you can see here with that second statement that I read, it was this idea of making an impact in the world. The idea of being a starting line for students, not so much, right? You wouldn't necessarily want to even use that as a concept for the school. It really did not resonate. Is it rocket science? No, but it sure is better than guessing. And you can see the first statement that I read to you. What was it about that statement that people were really attracted to? This idea that students who want to write their own story. So again, these are just a few slides from some very detailed research reports, but you can begin to get a sense of how doing this kind of research can guide the steering committee in making the right decisions for refining and fine-tuning the final brand promise statement, as well as the supporting messages and ultimately the creative concept that will come later. And this was our final brand promise statement. Very, very simple, but holds a lot of meaning and a tremendous amount of potential for finding that kind of focus and clarity that I just mentioned. Bloomfield College empowers bold and courageous students to write their own story and make an impact in the world.
I think that it's really important that that there's a feeling behind the brand promise, and I think what I've been doing since we came up with this is really at every meeting and at every presentation, having somebody in the audience say this out loud, and they can't help to do it with a huge smile on their face. It's just one of those things that makes you feel good. It empowers you to do your job and do it very, very well. And people have really just become attached to this brand promise.
Mm-hmm. The brand promise, and we'll show you a little bit later a sample of the actual brand book, but the brand promise, of course, cannot tell the whole story, and so it's supported by a number of key messages, or what we call brand attributes. And each one of these, you'll see a little bit later when I show you the example, is then supported by proof points, stories, examples. We really can't just put this out there without really proving how we're doing it, why we're doing it, and how it improves the lives of these students while they're at Bloomfield and beyond. So ultimately, what we called our brand positioning framework included the brand promise, an explanation of the brand, how it came to be, how it's to be used, the brand attributes. We also included some message segmentation strategies. Obviously, the way that you're going to be using some of these messages will be different depending on which audience you're addressing. We also completed an elevator speech. And the goal really is to have this shared framework that's going to help us to tell a collective, compelling, and enduring story. And it's something that we believe will really enhance and strengthen the Bloomfield College brand for years to come.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing that came out of this, I think, was one of the things was the elevator speech. And I think one of the most interesting things of this process, when I introduced this idea to the campus community, and we were going to give them an elevator speech, they were so excited. They're like, we've been dying for something like this. So when I meet somebody out in the community, I know, the proof points. I know our brand promise. I know the elevator speech that I should be using when conversing with those people. And I think that's an incredibly important thing to kind of arm people with. As long as they're bought in to your brand, they're going to be your best brand ambassadors. And people are really excited about that.
Once we had that foundation, we moved forward into the development of the visual identity. And this is, I think, a really critical point. What I've seen in some situations where perhaps a brand has not been successful for a college is that they jumped right to this visual identity and brand development. I worked with a school not that long ago that had been through a branding process with another company, and they were hiring us to redo the brand. And I said, why are you going through this process again? And the reason was that the faculty outright rejected the campaign. They did not have this upfront strategy. They were not involved in anything. All of a sudden, they were presented with their brand. And they had faculty and staff that said, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't recognize myself in this, and this doesn't reflect the school that I know and love. And I think that was an important goal in this project, was to make sure that when we went through this process, that the final product was something that everyone could be proud of and really excited to share. So this is why that was such an important part up front before we even move forward into developing any creative concept. This phase is really about bringing the brand promise and attributes to life. Words are very nice, but we're all visual people, and what we wanted to do was to develop a couple of distinctive concepts based around all of the work that had been done to this point. And so what we did is we developed two unique ideas, and we went to campus and we presented those along with the strategy, the rationale, and we also included some sample treatment. And I'm going to show you that in just a minute. The sample treatment is really just showing that concept in action, and you'll see a couple of what we call billboards or postcards, as well as a view book. And the reason why we wanted to do that is because we also wanted to focus test these concepts. This is, again, another opportunity to engage the campus community. And so we didn't just focus test them with prospective students. We focus tested them with all of our internal audiences as well. And I've had clients say to me, well, Beatrice, why would we bother focus testing this with faculty? They're not really the key audience. And I say, absolutely, they're the key audience. If your internal audience cannot be excited about what it is that we're going to put out there, how in the world are we going to get our external audiences to be excited about it? I want the faculty and the students to look at this and say, yes, this is who we are, and I'm so proud to be part of this institution. And so it was really important for us to, once again, engage them in the process. For those of you who have larger institutions or have multiple campuses, one thing that we often recommend is to do some online testing. And we've done that for several clients. We're just doing, a couple of focus groups or a couple of days of focus groups might not be enough to reach all of your key audiences, or especially if you serve multiple audiences as well. So for those of you who are doing this on your own, you may also want to consider online testing of the concepts to give you a really good insight into what's really resonating with people. Because at this point, when you get to the creative, there is an emotional reaction. Yes, you're telling the story of the brand that you've just developed, but what is it, what kind of emotional reaction are people having to this? Does it make them want to learn more about the school? Does it make them feel connected to you? And Adam, I don't know if you had any additional comments on that step before I actually move into the concepts.
No, I mean, I think, again, I think you hit it nail on the head. It was just having buy-in throughout the process and knowing that even through all of these research phases and building out the brand promise options, that we were still going to have multiple options brought back to us before we make a final decision. I think that's important.
Right. So we just wanted to show you very quickly, for the purposes of today's presentation, we don't have time to go into the rationale and everything that accompanied each concept, but we'd just like to show you the two different concepts that were developed, and then talk a little bit about what we learned from the focus groups and how that ultimately led to to a refined concept that got rolled out into everything from internal to external strategies and tactics. The first concept we called Bloomfield Because. And this concept really was about positioning Bloomfield College as a place that recognizes and validates students' ambitions. It really is a place where students are given the inspiration, preparation, and confidence to realize their goals. And I'll show you just a couple of the billboard or what we call postcard sample executions just to give you some flavor for what the concept looked like. For lifelong goals, for life-changing achievements, Bloomfield College, because you have dreams to accomplish. For nonstop inspiration, for once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, Bloomfield College, because you have talents to share. And then you can see this is the sample of the view book cover, because there's a world to transform. So you can see how we're using this because concept, which works really nicely with Bloomfield, of course. And then we also did an interior spread of the view book. So this is all the examples that we showed for the purposes of focus testing. And I'm not going to read you the sample copy here, but because learning opens doors, kind of the headline, and then we did some sample copy because we wanted to test the tone and the style that would accompany this concept. And when we tested them with students and other audiences, we got some tremendous insights into what they liked from both a visual and editorial perspective. This concept actually really built on that one piece of the brand promise, which is about making an impact in the world, which you may recall. The second concept built on another piece of our brand promise, but took us in a slightly different direction, and that was this idea of write your own story. You saw in the research that was just a message that really resonated with people, and even in our discussions with people on campus, this theme and this idea was so apparent from everyone that we spoke to. And you can see here, it's your story, write an accomplished one. It's your story, write a winning one. And then you can see here, this is the sample of the view book cover as well as the interior spread with some sample copy again so that we could read these to the people that were focus testing and really get a good sense of what's resonating with them and what's not. When we conducted the focus groups, we did, as I mentioned earlier, with both internal and external audiences. We wanted to know which concept best conveys the essence of our brand, which one really says this is us, and which one really distinguishes from other colleges and universities. Ultimately, the focus groups were very interesting. They gave us some really great direction. What we found was that while people really liked the because concept, it was a little bit worry, perhaps, and I'm just paraphrasing this very quickly for the purposes of today's conversation. People really loved the write your own story idea. It was simple, it was powerful, it was really Bloomfield. They didn't necessarily like the cover photo of the view book. That surprised us because I personally really liked that. They loved the seal that you see in the first concept here. And so we ended up, through the focus groups, gaining some great insight and ultimately refining and strengthening the final concept. So you can see here that we maintained the it's your story or the write your own story idea, but we incorporated some of the design elements and photography from the other concept, ultimately making a much, much stronger concept overall. We were also able to fine-tune some of the messaging and the tone and the style, the photography, and again, really gave us wonderful insight while at the same time engaging the campus community.
I just want to add that this is probably the most frightening part of the process for me. Going in and knowing that we're going to be presented with these two concepts, I was just scared that, what if this committee, what if this campus was split right down the middle? Half of them loved because Bloomfield, half of them loved to write your own story. But it was so nice to see how it all kind of played out, and it became very clear very quickly that we were going to get something great out of this because people just started really discussing and being really open with their opinions on what they liked about the first concept versus what they liked about the second concept, and how this combination that was born from those meetings, I just think represents us so well, and I think that's so difficult to do. I mean, over my 11 years here at Bloomfield, we've had so many different concepts and view book covers, and I keep them all in my office as a reminder now of where we've come from. But to have this kind of collective voice that we think is so powerful and just so attractive, is a really empowering thing. It's been fantastic.
This is a sample of the brand manual that followed the development of the creative concepts. I'm just going to open this up very briefly, if I can. Oh, actually, in presentation mode, it doesn't seem to. There we go. Let me just click on this for one quick second so you can see. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you can see here that on the interior, we outlined the brand promise, an explanation of it, the elevator speech that Adam talked about that everyone was really excited to receive. Here are the brand attributes of the key messages, and you can kind of see the key message here followed by the different points of differentiation and points of pride, examples, stories. And this is really meant to be something that is an evolving and living document that you can build on for many, many years. It also includes the color palette that we envisioned for the creative concept, the fonts, the photo style, all of those things, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it gives you a really good sense of how this gives you the tools that you need to be consistent. And that's another area where I believe a lot of colleges would really benefit from having not only that collective voice and concept, but the tools that they need to consistently implement the brand.
One of my favorite part of this process was really developing the points of differentiation. And I think it was a really important exercise for us to sit down as a collective, and we actually went over this several times through several workshops, and really just ask the campus community, what makes us unique? What are our points of differentiation? And we would go through and we would list all the things that we think make us unique. And once we compile that massive list, and we all have those massive lists, then kind of going back to it and saying, okay, well, what makes us truly unique? If we go to another public institution in New Jersey, we go to another private institution in New Jersey, are they talking about the same things? Are they saying they have free tutoring for all their classes? Are they saying they're affordable and they're going to work with students one-on-one through the financial aid process? Well, if they are, that really isn't necessarily a point of differentiation. So we wanted that list to really be the things that will help us stand out, and specific things that we do that we know other schools aren't doing. And I think that's a tremendous exercise.
Mm-hmm. The next phase, maybe I'll just stop before I get into launching the brand and I noticed that nobody has used the chat function. Does anyone have any questions or comments at this point before we move into launching the brand? Okay. Well, I'll just keep moving on, but don't hesitate to type up a question or a comment, and we will be happy to answer that for you. The next phase is really launching the brand, and I think this is where, again, it's where it all comes together. And we worked with the steering committee once again to prioritize our target audiences and develop a variety of action plans. And again, keeping in mind that our audiences are both internal and external. Some of the obvious things that we did is we rolled the new brand into the website, the signage, recruitment publications, a whole host of different activities. We also wanted to talk about how we're going to introduce the brand to our internal audiences first and really empower them to share the Bloomfield story. And that was a pretty big goal that you had, wasn't it, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we used kind of a town hall meeting as our brand launch, where we have the whole campus community come together. And it was really a big celebration about, the brand that we were able to come up with. We coupled that with, we have a very specific and targeted customer service program on our campus. So we've been incorporating the branding points and that program into the customer service experience. And then finally, I kind of went on the road. I brought my director of marketing, who's fantastic, and key members from the steering committee, and I'm setting up meetings with all the different departments, with all the different academic divisions, to meet with their staff one-on-one and really talk about what the brand means to their specific area. Because that's really the next step for us. And I think we have this overarching brand which is going to be really, really successful. But I want people to start thinking about, how do they take that information, take all these resources, and use it on a day-to-day basis in their area. And that's a part of the process now that I'm really getting excited about.
Mm-hmm. This is, we're not going to be able to share this video with you, but for those of you who are joining us, we are going to send you a follow-up email so that you can watch this video. It is, well, I guess we called it a brand teaser, and I absolutely love this video, and I've seen it probably 24 times now. And what it is, starting with the president and key people from across the campus community that tell us what it means to write your own story at Bloomfield. And I think this speaks volumes to the point that we've been making here about developing a brand that you can live up to. If your internal audiences can articulate it and get excited about it, boy, you sure have a solid foundation for building your brand for many, many years. So again, we'll share that with you so you'll be able to see it. Adam, tell us a little bit about the brand cover story.
Yeah, so the other way we got the news out to the campus community and internal and external constituents is through our alumni newsletter, our Alumni and Friends newsletter. So we did a whole spotlight and really dedicated an issue to our brand launch. And I think this was one of probably the most productive and efficient ways to get the news out because this goes out to several thousand people kind of in our circle of friends for the institution. And this really spread like wildfire. So we had people, jumping on to our Twitter account, jumping onto our Facebook page that had never posted before, and just talking about how excited they were to get this in the mail and to learn about the direction that the school is going. And I think probably the most important thing to us was that they really found it to be genuine. It didn't come as a shock to them that we were going in this direction, but they understood kind of where we were coming from with the Write Your Own Story theme. And again, we have a fantastic advancement office, and the Director of Public Relations really did a fantastic job kind of bringing this all together. And I think, one of the quotes in this, and I love this, and I kind of tell this to everybody that when we talk about this process and our new brand is, Ty, one of the people we worked with from TWG Plus said, this brand, this idea of Write Your Own Story was always on the Bloomfield College campus. It was just hiding in plain sight. People were talking about it, but it was never, kind of given the opportunity to come to the forefront and be that collective voice. And that's really highlighted in this cover story. And it's on our website, www.bloomfield.edu, if you want to read it.
Great. It looks like we have a question from Jordan. He wants to know the benefits of changing your brand so often with the view book.
The benefits? Well, I can tell you from experience that there are a few benefits from constantly changing the look, feel, and messaging in your view book. I think a refresher is important every so often, but going forward, and part of the reason why we went through this process is so we can come up with that consistent messaging that we're going to use for years to come. So the pictures may change, some of the taglines may change over the years, but the central theme we've really adopted. So we're going to build out all of our marketing and recruitment publications using this idea of Write Your Own Story going forward. And I think that's really going to bring us the consistency that's going to allow us to really build up our name recognition. And that's one of the challenges that we have. We're a small private school in a saturated market. So we need to do things the right way in order to make sure that Bloomfield College is being talked about and on the tip of people's tongues when they're talking about college options in New Jersey. And you don't do that by being all over the place with your marketing and branding messages. So I think consistency is key.
Right. Adam, tell us a little bit about the Bloomfield Storytellers.
Yeah, so this was like a really easy way to kind of brand our student ambassador program. So for years, we had a great student ambassador program. Our students are just tremendous. And they do things like work in the admissions office, they work our open houses, they do our campus tours, they run our telemarketing program. But when we went through this program and we came up with the idea of Write Your Own Story, we said, we got to brand our student ambassador program as well. So we changed it to, our student storyteller program. And now they only refer to themselves as storytellers. So we've changed the way we do a campus tour. It's a lot less of, this is our building, this is when it was built, this is what's housed here. It's about our students telling specific stories about how they use, the Learning Resource Center, how they use the library, how they use the recreation facilities. And it's really changed kind of everything that we do from a campus tour, campus visitation, and a telemarketing standpoint. The students absolutely loved it. They loved it because they got new swag and they got their, their cool storyteller pullovers. But they've really embraced the idea that this is an important position. And I think we've done a good job internally of really making this one of those prestigious positions on campus, making the application process very specific, where they have to do a video testimonial. They have to tell us their story, kind of through a quick YouTube clip, to be considered for the position. And just so many students came out for it, and we just have a tremendous group that are our initial group of storytellers.
These are some examples of some of the external rollout. We've been talking, and we'll come back to the internal in just a minute. You can see the search piece, the view book, some bus shelters, a new website, so all of the things that you would typically expect with a brand rollout. I think what was really fun and interesting and more engaging, though, was really talking about how can we extend the brand to be experienced at every touch point. And I remember that workshop very well, where basically we said there's no idea too small or too big. And let's not think about budget. Let's think about what is really going to work. And we talked about a lot of different things, starting with the parking lot attendant, right, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the coolest things that we've done is, this idea of using the parking lot attendant, which happens to be, the first person a lot of people meet in terms of our prospective students. And we just recently had an instant decision day on campus. So we asked the parking lot attendant, if someone tells you that they're here for an instant decision day, incorporate the theme, so you're just starting your story now. Oh, you're going to start your story at Bloomfield College now. And just that little touch, which is being reinforced again back in the admissions office, will have a lasting effect.
Mm-hmm. I think that's such a great example. There was a lot of other campaigns and ideas that we talked about, a lot of social media ideas. There were some things that we really talked about from the president's point of view, and I think every college in America always struggles with, how do we keep our campus community informed? They've already got so many different newsletters that they're getting and emails and so on. But we really felt that the Bloomfield community was hungry for stories. They wanted to know about all the great things that were happening, and we wanted to empower them with the knowledge and the different things so that they'll be enthusiastic to share it with everyone that they come into contact with. So one of our ideas that we're looking to implement is a monthly story from the president, and this would be a really simple, and you can see that sort of second last bullet. This would be just a really simple idea. Every month the president comes out with an email that could be a video where he shares something really great about Bloomfield. And that could be a student success, it could be a faculty success, it could be just about anything, an alum, just something small that people could read and look forward to every month that will get them excited and, again, want to continue to share that story about Bloomfield.
One of the challenges we had being a small school is we weren't even being a small school, we should have, kind of news at the tip of our tongue. But, so much was going on our campus, but it wasn't being concentrated in one area. So it just wasn't getting out there to the larger audience. And one of the things that happened kind of organically when we launched this idea was our PR department got inundated with requests and people, faculty and staff, letting them know, this is my story. This is what I'm doing, wanting to get that out there again. So I think it really just made people comfortable and maybe inspired them to just be a lot more open about the good work they're doing on campus, and that's a great thing.
One of the things that really impressed me, too, is the members of that steering committee wanted to look even deeper. They said, well, how can we even affect our programming and our outcomes for our students? And the last bullet here, I won't go into a lot of detail, but it's something that we got kind of excited about, this idea of, how do students, when they graduate, how can we add value to their degree? And one of the things that we brainstormed was this idea of, well, our concept is write your own story. Wouldn't it be fantastic if every student who graduated had a portfolio of all of their accomplishments during their time at Bloomfield? I mean, this would be something that they would be able to take with them on job interviews and be able to say, look at all the great things I learned in addition to earning a degree. And there could be different points of competency, different engaging projects, from critical thinking to an international experience, you name it. And it would be something that could be captured for them as part of their Bloomfield story. But ultimately, the goal was to make sure that when they left, they had the tools that they needed to go out and get a job. And so that's something that we're currently working on. And I remember the advancement office was really excited about that idea and said, hey, maybe we can ask a donor to participate in that. And so I'm just using that as another example because what the message that I want to convey today is that it's not just about what promotional materials can we develop. It's really about how can we do a better job and how can we infuse this brand and strengthen it at every opportunity. Ultimately, what we did with these action plans, and we won't share a lot of them with you, that's probably a whole separate, the rollout and all of the different action plans that we're currently working on and implementing could probably form a whole new webinar. But I just wanted to reinforce this idea of prioritizing the action plans. We came up with some fantastic ideas. We had to prioritize those. We had to assign a budget. We had to define the metrics. How are we going to know whether or not this was effective? And so that's really what we were I'd say we're kind of in that stage right now of still working through a lot of those things and making some decisions beyond some of the things that we've shown you today. Ultimately, I think a couple of the final thoughts that we want to leave you with, and I'm hoping that we can entertain a few more questions, is that branding should never be treated as a project that has a beginning or an end. Just because the formal process is completed, the branding work really begins now. I mean, how do we incorporate it into everything we're doing, and how do we continue to strengthen our identity and communicate who we are to all of our key constituents? And ultimately, the real art of branding is in the promise keeping. We wanted to develop a brand that was authentic, one that we could live up to, one that we could continue to build on. And keeping that promise and looking for ways to strengthen that promise is really what's going to make your brand successful. And with that,
I think this part is really holding us to a higher standard of service as well. I mean, we thought really big, and we were really bold in terms of where we wanted to be as part of this branding campaign. So it's caused quite a stir on campus, and it has inspired people to kind of push the envelope in their particular area. Because when you put something down on paper and it's part of your branding campaign, you need to live up to it. So now I think people are really seeing, as we're really doing a rollout of this campaign, and it's really becoming kind of it's taking on physical attributes. People are really stepping up, and I think the fact that they put it in writing and they said this is something that we can do, now they're really starting to make it come to life.
Okay, great. Anyone have any questions or comments? I think I'm looking at the chat box here. I know we only have a few minutes left, and I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us. As you can see, we covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time, and if you have any questions for either one of us, we'd love the opportunity to speak with you. Or if you want to just email us a question, we'd be happy to respond to you as well. Okay. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. Adam, any final words of advice to those of us, to those who are joining us today?
Thank you very much. Go forth, be bold, take risks. This process is an incredibly eye-opening one. I encourage everybody to take part in this really process that's all about self-reflection and building for the future. And if you're about to embark on a campaign like this, I wish you the best of luck. And I can't say enough about TWG Plus as a partner. They've been fantastic to us here at Bloomfield College.
Thank you very much, Adam, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And again, if you have questions that we've missed or that you come up with as you're reflecting on this, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.